And so many of us as HSP people, like we know what to do for other people. Like we're so in tune with other people, we sometimes lose that intunement, that tuning for ourselves. And the golden rule, do unto others as you want others to do unto you, like it needs to be reversed. Do to yourself as you do to others. And give to yourself like you give to others. Because so much of that is that we don't take into consideration all of the things that like we have to come down from, or the whatever it may be. I mean, everyone's different, but that really resonated with me because we're so good at taking care of other people. And we would tell people, I'm like, oh, listen to your needs, listen to what your body says, but then we'll run ourselves ragged if we have the opportunity to.
Illuminance specializes in developing sensory processing sensitivity, a natural high sensory intelligence present in 30% of the population, co-creating with the power of humanity to consciously evolve towards balance. This session features trained high sensory coaches, facilitators, and consultants who coach other high sensory people and partner with organizations globally. To contact them directly or to find out about our programs, please see the details in the description.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zack, and welcome to the HSP Hangout. And I have today with me Syrah and Katy. And today we're going to kind of talk about a few different things, but really what I kind of wanted to discuss was how we as HSPs honor our self-care and kind of what our day-to-day looks like. And I'm really excited to jump in with this with Katy and Syrah because right before we started, we kind of had a little powwow and we all are quite different. So I will get us kind of started and then we can kind of take off from there. How I was kind of thinking about this going was how I kind of can regulate myself and how I know that I can start my day feeling good and feeling energized. And it actually, for me, starts the night before. I'm not sure if that is how you two operate either, but I'm always someone who uses like my notepad as my best friend. And I'll kind of go through and do my checklist of all the things that I know I need to complete the next day, and kind of get a plan in place, because then I can kind of regulate that system overload that we often experience. But after kind of just speaking to the two of you, what are your guys' thoughts on that?
No, please. The first thing I want to go back to, because we're like keeping this chill here so people can engage. When you first said it, Zack, I just have to say I absolutely hate the word self-care.
I know, I do hate it too.
I don't know what the other word is. I know exactly why we use it. I think it keeps taking sensory back to like things that we need to care for instead of like beings that we are, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And just like being okay to be this way and then doing things to kind of self-regulate. So that's like a little tangent.
I know. I think of self-care as like a nail file. Like, I feel like that's like self-care to me is something taking care of my like self, but it goes deeper than that. And I think
and when you start talking about being a high sensory leader, like in an institutional environment, in a business setting, in a corporate environment, like whenever we use words like self-care and stuff like that, like it, I just feel people like turn off.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what the other word is. I've been using balance a lot. I've been using regulation a lot. I've also been using activation a lot and amplification of my strengths, because we all know that we can't activate and fully leverage. I've also talked a lot about leveraging our assets, because we really cannot leverage our assets in any environment, personal or professional, if we're not balanced.
Sure.
And that our nervous systems are activated more quickly than non-HSPs. Like those are two facts, right? So then it becomes about like regulation, like energy regulation for me. So I will pause with that soapbox and I will pass it off to Katy.
No, that's really interesting. I've never really considered it that way. I think it hasn't come up for me because I don't speak about it much. And I think that's part of the challenge. Like I don't bring up at work that I've got my self-care or accommodations or whatever I'm doing. I actually try to mask that and hide that, so I appear as, just one of the group into it. But yeah, as we were talking about before, Zack, you had mentioned your daily routines, and we started to talk about how routines just don't work for me. Something about the way that I'm wired, in addition to being an HSP, and I suspect it might be that I'm high sensory seeking. I've learned a great deal about that from Syrah, and it's been really interesting that I crave the novelty. And even more so, if I create, say, a routine for myself, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do this X thing, I will become to dread it. I'll feel like there's some adult or grown up telling me I need to do it. And I'm like, no, just out of an act of defiance. So for me, it turns into, I know I have a whole toolbox of tools that I can use. And in the moment, once I've identified what do I need, then I go out and I source the tool that's right for the moment, that matches the mood, both internally and the need externally. But every time I've tried to put in structure, like what you're talking about, make sure I journal right before bed. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Make sure I, have a routine in the morning. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So really it's about novelty and routine, but being aware of what my needs are.
So since the both of you are, it sounds like more like HSP, but also high sensory seeking, which I haven't done a ton of like background research on, but how does kind of like wanting to, I don't want to say like fly by the seat of your pants, but maybe sort of that like mentality, how does that relate to like, how does that translate over to your relationships and to your family and to your jobs? Both of you have, jobs that, there's a lot of other people involved. How does that work when there are set routines in those types of environments and with children and those types of things?
So I think for me is because we're HSP and HSS, that HSPs love routine. So there is a part of us that likes routine, but routine framed in a different way, meaning like things that we have to do to stay balanced. Right. And I actually am on a really strict routine because I'm a mother right now. Like my child wakes me up at an exact time every morning. And we have to go to bed at an exact time every night. And my spouse's schedule is very precise. So there's things that have to be done. I think that for me, it's that I can't live every second of my day on a schedule with a routine. I need to allow space for creativity and finding new things and excitement within that. Because the high sensation seeking part is all about our brains being wired to seek novelty and new experiences, and even willing to be able to take a little bit of risk to have new experiences. So there's actually a lot of different ways I can do that. This is actually a funny story from when I was in my 20s when I discovered this. One of the ways I do that is I have a ton of different condiments in my fridge. Like at one point in my 20s, I probably had 20 different types of mustard because I'm a foodie and I really love different kinds of things. And I like making exploring different foods from different cultures. And so that's like there's lots of like safe, comfortable, affordable ways to allow your brain to experience novel experiences without like breaking up the whole bigger picture. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So for me, I know that there's certain things that I have to do. And of course at my job, like there's certain meetings I have to attend and a certain schedule and things have to get done. For me in my career, I schedule those in a very specific way so that A, I'm not overbooked on certain days, and B, that there's kind of like a rolling, and I don't have 3 days of solid packed meetings or calls back to back. Some people don't have the luxury of doing that. I think Katy has less luxury of doing that. But also that there's more of like an overall arc, if that makes sense, to the rhythm. For me, it's all about like maintaining a rhythm. So it's not necessarily about like not having a routine. It's about like having choices throughout the day. To say like, today, I'm not necessarily going to eat breakfast before I leave the house. Instead, I'm going to go pick up something. To have all of these choices through, or today, like not saying I'm going to run outside every day for 2 weeks and that's the goal, but instead saying I'm going to exercise and I'm going to let myself feel it, because the part of it is also like responding to the environment. Like if it's a really beautiful, gorgeous, sunny day, it is such an amazing treat to take a walk or to take a run. Right. And if it's a really, really busy day, sometimes it is like a really short workout instead of a long workout. And for me, the routine part is all about layering in opportunity for adjustment. So I guess I do have a routine, but there's like a lot of opportunities for how I implement it. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. I mean, you don't want to be like stuck to the schedule and not have any room for like any spontaneity or any sort of any sort of like curveball, or whether it's something that you want or something that you have to adapt to. Sorry, this is like so bright.
So for me, like my routine actually is underbooking myself.
Okay.
Like that's my routine for balance, is underbooking myself, because when I overbook myself or even just adequately book myself, there's no room for exploration or change based on my body's regulation and what I need to adapt. So
it's so interesting, because what happened to me today, just right before we jumped on this, is that a friend reached out to me and was like, hey, do you want to get lunch? And so like for me as that routined person, I was like, okay, and I had to think, I'm like, okay, you could do this today, but this was not something that was planned. And then I was thinking, this person also generally stresses me out. And I don't know if I'm going to get I don't know how it's going to affect me. So I had to be like, it's not necessarily a routine, but it was more of the like, I wasn't planning on having lunch with anyone today. And so like the spontaneity part of it for me was like,
it's stressful.
too spontaneous.
Yeah.
Too spontaneous. So we're going to lunch next Tuesday. So I can plan that, because then I get overrun. I'm like, okay, well, what happens, if I go to this lunch, and I am not like rigid, but I certainly like, how long will the lunch last? Like, I don't know. That's interesting. Do you feel the same way, Katy?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting in listening to both of you, because first off, I'm at a different position in my life where I'm an empty nester now. So when my son was younger, absolutely the routine, he had to get to school on time. There was pickup times. There's all this stuff. You've got to get it done. My life was not my own. And then I became an empty nester and it got to be my own. And then I was fortunate enough to take some time off during the pandemic. And I really, truly had the freedom to set, what is my mood right now? I've woken up. What do I want to work on? And it was the most aligned I've ever felt. And then I ran out of money and had to go back to work. And it has been really jarring to head back into work for all the reasons we're talking about. Once I got myself fully aligned to, well, this is how I operate, that is not the way an organization operates. So finding that balance, for me personally, I don't have control over how many meetings I have, but I try to stagger them so that there are some that are webcam off in between those that are webcam on, because they require a different level of energy for me. I try to make sure I've got at least a several hour block in every single day that is not booked. And sometimes that's used for work, because all of a sudden I've sparked on something and I'm deep diving into it. Sometimes it's used for, let me go walk in nature, because what I need is to stop the 72 tabs that are open and I need to close them down. I need to ground. I need to empty out. And sometimes it's a creative task, whatever it is. But the point is that's my time and people don't interrupt that. Now, I am lucky in that I work globally. So I work with mostly Europeans and Australians. So that middle afternoon time, there's not a lot of people who want me. But I think it's a good example of, you have to adapt to the realities of what the business needs, but it doesn't mean that you need to give up what you need. And I think that's what I used to do, was give up my needs and put those to the back burner and say, it's fine. They pay me to show up and to burn myself out. And that for me required a bit of a mind shift to say, they're not paying me to show up and just do the work and burn myself out. They're paying me to show up and bring the gifts that I have. And in order to bring the gifts that I have, I need some structure and things, and they're my responsibility. So I'll take care of them. Work doesn't need to worry about it, but building all of that into the day. But I also, Zack, would not respond well to, let's have lunch today. right? I'm not a let me adapt in the day. When we talked about once before showing up at a theme park and my friends came along and I'm like, no, I don't want to see everyone here. I need to be mentally prepared. Because again, I think what I'm doing, curious if you guys are doing the same, is sort of monitoring my energy level. I know how much energy I'm going to need for later in the day for the things I already had planned. And like you said, you don't know how long this is going to last. Is it going to be restorative or draining? There's too many variables there. So best to schedule that out in the future where then I can mentally prepare for it. So for example, I've got a family week coming up for vacation. We're all introverts. So you think we'd all have our own times that we separate out and do our own things, but we rarely see each other. So we tend to be all on top of each other all the time. That requires some mental preparation. That requires some additional work to lead up to that needs to be booked. But I'm glad I do it, and it's going to push me past my extremes. But that's valuable.
And that's, I think that the biggest thing is, I think that what I was kind of getting at when I was thinking about this topic was, in order for me to be able to be like that adaptable and to be that like, hey, yeah, let's go get lunch. Like I have to make sure that I've done all the things that I know that I need to be the best person to do that. Like if I was planning on doing laundry or if I was planning on doing something, so that's why I kind of like have my routines per se, not like rigid times and like, set things, but like I like to exercise in the morning because that's something that I know makes me the best person I can be. So like I need to do that in the morning. Just making sure the things that I know that are important to me are taken care of, that I have control over, that no one else is really going to care about whether I do or not, but they're kind of like my things. If I do those things, whether it's responding to emails or it's whatever it may be, that does change on a daily basis, but making sure that I know that those things are taken care of, then I can be a little bit more hey, yeah, or, but like if I'm feeling that I'm not getting the things that I know fill me up and then things that take care of me completed, it's really hard for me to move past that. So it's like, I just kind of have to do those things. I do daily affirmations. I, meditate. Those things I know will just lead me throughout the day to be more grounded and more present to take care of, all the other things I don't have control over.
I will say when the working out thing, like it triggered in my head of like, I am on the other side of Katy's world where I have a 1-year-old and a 3.5-year-old, and my schedule is like not my own. And so part of that is just kind of like giving into that and letting that go. And I have to, like, I can't, there's no one else to do it. There's no one here to do it. And so, but when you were talking about the balance, like then I allow a lot more balance. I allow a lot more balance in my free time, like in my weekend and evening time, to not have any commitments or schedules. Like we do very little that's actually on a calendar because I have that rigid schedule during the week. So it's more about just like keeping it all balanced, right? Like the whole picture. So if somebody has a work schedule that they don't have any control over, it's so much more important to have the nights and the weekends be more flexible. In terms of like the time in my life when I had the most routine that I loved the most was actually when I was in graduate school, but it's because every day was different because you have different classes, you have different meetings, you have different schedules, you have a 4-day really focused work week, then you have like a 3-day weekend when you're also working, but you're doing a whole lot of homework. And so during graduate school, like my routine was actually like working out for an hour and a half every morning because that I was able to do that and everything else was so changing. That I didn't need that change within that routine. Does that make sense? So for me, it's about like finding like what I know has to be done and what I have to like commit to in order to move through whatever needs to be done in my home life or my professional life. And then seeing how much time that's going to take up and then freeing out the rest for my brain just to be like free and let go. Even though I have free time on Saturday, like on Saturdays and Sundays, I do not do bills. Like I just don't, because it puts my brain in such like a negative place. I need my brain to kind of just open up and rest. I also find the most important thing for me about that free space, and that's where Katy, you said like I block out blocks, and this isn't like 30 minutes for me. This is like blocks of time. I think blocks of time are really important because that's where I have my strongest insights. that's when the brain quiets enough and the body quiets enough to say, oh, I've been stewing on this thing for 3 weeks and the answer comes. Right. And what I've noticed, if I don't block out enough time in those ways, allow my brain and my body enough kind of refresh, rejuvenation, whatever word you want to use, that my brain doesn't process those insights so fast. And a lot of those insights do actually help me in my professional career. And so that's language that I haven't quite figured out how to explain that at work, but it's something I kind of show and just illustrate through my work. And I know Katy and I have talked a lot about this too, of like when we have that time and space to our brain, because this is all, the whole self-care thing is all about brain and body restoration time and balance, right? That's all it is, whatever that is for everybody. And so I think the most important thing in my routine per se is just allowing more time and space than any non-HSP would be like, what do you do with all that time? And it's like, well, I'm processing.
I saw an interview with somebody yesterday. It was just, I shouldn't say an interview. I saw a TikTok where this woman was talking and they were wrapping up an interview and she's got all this camera crew ahead of her. And she's like, with as much respect as possible, as soon as you all leave, I'm just going to stare at a wall for 2 hours. And just because it's just so overwhelming and you need to plan in that time for that reset. 100% agree. And for the focus work. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I always say like I could stare like at paint drying because it's like that's how I do process. And that's, a part of like the whole like routine part of it, I think again, we don't like the word routine. I don't mind it, but like as being parents and as being, having these like kind of more like structured jobs, like a routine outside of an already routine. Like I'm self-employed, so selling real estate, I've always had to create a routine or I will never work. I don't like the work isn't like 9 to 5 type thing. So I am more, like scheduled with those types of things because I just need some sort of a basis. But I think that, we all have these different kind of things that we do or we don't do, which is also doing like staring at a wall for 2 hours to process. And I think that like, doing those big time blocks or not scheduling a million things on the weekends, like being open, whether it leads you to go do something or to have a new experience or to just not have an experience is sort of like an experience in its own.
Yeah.
And
yeah, no, I totally agree.
I feel like HSPs, I think that all people need it, but I think that us as, being highly sensitive individuals and like HSS, like it's even more important. And when we're around people, and part of me kind of choosing this topic was when we're around people who aren't necessarily like that, the go people, which we all have in our lives, how can we, or how do we still interact with them, but still honoring the things that like we need, and like things that we were talking about, like, for example, I will always drive myself somewhere in the event I'm going to do something with people. Like, I don't care if they come with me, but I need to have my car because when they're wanting to do something all day, all night long, like it's too much for me. I need to have an exit strategy or an Uber or something. And so those are the kind of things that I think of when I want to go out and do things and I want to have fun and I want to enjoy life, as we all do. But I always kind of have to have this little toolkit of like, okay, getting a little bit prepared, not saying you're gonna have to use them all, but having some things with me, or just kind of that I have pre-thought out and kind of like pre-visualized maybe in my head to prepare me for whatever I'm going to do, has been really helpful for me. And just doing day-to-day life with other people who don't necessarily feel the same way that I do.
Yeah, I'm totally with you, Zach. I think whenever I go anywhere, I'm always in control of my movement via vehicle or metro or some kind of, or if I used to live where I would walk everywhere or bicycle everywhere. I think it's super important to be in charge of our own transportation or have access to transportation near us to be able to walk to where we want to go. Because we can't go on that level as non-HSPs. I come from 2 parents who were go all the time. So I was just like constantly overstimulated. But like in some ways a good way, because it was feeding my desire to explore and my curiosity and my intellectual. I think the first, like if we're talking about like advice of like things that really work, what really was a transformation for me personally is internally knowing that it's okay not to be go go go, like actually, like not just like intellectually knowing, but like in my body, like knowing that it's okay, to be able to set those boundaries and not feel bad about them. Because for years I felt terrible about them. I would go to everything I was invited to, but then I would break down and I would just need a couple days by myself, and then people wouldn't understand how I was so in it and then so out of it, and like needing that kind of downtime, and just being able to, like, now that I feel like in my as we evolve as high sensory people and we understand ourselves more, just being able to put that language in front of people in confidence from ourselves, right? So now, like when my parents come to visit, it's like we have a really clear schedule. We actually do have a schedule and a routine in that sense, to say, actually, okay, we're going to do our big thing in the morning. We're going to do this, and all these stressful things that stress me out personally, we're going to put things on them. We're not going to cook a massive meal. We're going to order in by a certain downtime in the afternoon. We're going to have downtime. We actually book and schedule like downtime together, because I actually like love watching House Hunters or Beach Hunters or something silly like that. And we sit and do that together. So I actually take a lot more direction now, like inform a lot more direction. Say, I know I'm going to get overwhelmed during this time together, but I really enjoy spending the time together. So can we at least book in the afternoon time that this is like our downtime and we're going to chill out together? And so we're not like, out and about like 12 hours a day and coming home completely exhausted. So that's how I approach it. But I will say, if you're just discovering you're an HSP, that is one of the hardest things that I personally experienced in my 20s and my 30s, of figuring out what that balance was and communicating it, so that you can maintain relationships and maintain friendships, and making sure that people know that you love them, you're with them, you are actually deeply care for them, and you think about them all the time if they're your dear friends, but you can't physically do everything that they can do. If So that's my take.
Some days I think, and I think that's excellent. And I think that the big thing is like, again, something that I'm trying to, kind of get out there, is being HSP is you're a person like everyone else. And so like, whether you're HSP listening to this or not HSP listening to this, these are things that are really like kind of like you can use just as a human. And it's just a little bit harder for us as the HSPs to kind of get into those regulations or to self-regulate and really kind of like know those boundaries. But I think that it's also really, for me, like coming into this and learning about this, is like, it's okay. Like I'm going to have good days and I'm going to have bad days. And like, everyone's going to have good days and everyone's going to have bad days. And there's going to be some weeks that are really good. And then you're going to, it ebbs and flows. And, kind of coming into that acceptance of it is just like, it makes it just feel like a lot lighter. At least it did for me.
No, I agree 100%. I think that's the hardest part to sort of come to grips with, is that there's nothing wrong with me, and that I'm, I am different, but, and that's okay. And that's not much more than okay. It's part of my strength and part of the beauty. And I just need to function a little bit different than others. What's interesting is I am also, I think because I'm HSS, a go type of person in certain situations. So when I'm traveling, I really become the person, or I did historically become the person who's like, sleep when you're dead. Let's go see everything we can. We're not here for very long. Let's knock it out. But again, that ties back to being mentally prepared for that, right? Like that's the lead up to it. And then the excitement and the enthusiasm of the novelty of the new, of it's fine. I got off a plane. I'm jet lagged. Doesn't matter. Stay up. Don't let it mess with you. Let's go do things and see things. So it doesn't, just because you're an HSP doesn't mean you can't be go. It just means you need to anticipate before and after. It's not a sustainable pace, I have found, but it can be a lot of fun. It can be a lot of fun to land and go.
I love that you said that, Katy, because that really resonates with me, because I'm the same way. As much as I'm someone, like, I just need to know that, like, are we going to eat at some point throughout the day? Or are we going to, like, I like to always kind of have like a little bit of like a loose agenda, like, let's go and do it. But like, let's not like deprive ourselves because we're like so full forced into one thing that we forget to take care of ourselves, whether it's food, water, rest, whatever it is. Like those are the things that I've seen myself sort of crash, that I'm like, because I do go too. And then I'm like, oh, like I haven't eaten since like, actually I haven't even eaten today. And like, I'm getting like not into a good place. um, and just like, I think that like when you're doing it for yourself, that's great. But like when you're with groups of people, you just have to really like let it be known, like, hey, like, can we just like at least like plan like noon, we're going to eat lunch. So then everyone just knows.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
well, yeah, and I think that's interesting because I'm curious, Sarah, if you feel the same way. I know that when I had a toddler, that really taught me that lesson really well, of preparing to make sure you have snacks because they're going to get grumpy, or whatever. And in learning how to care for a toddler, I better learned how to care for myself along the way. You sort of in caring for others, you figure that out. And so now I always have a snack in my pocket, because or in my purse. So if someone's cranky, you're going to have food at the ready. If we need to rest, we'll stay on top of it. But yeah, I agree. Having at least a sense of agreement that your needs are going to be met, right? So if there's someone else in charge who doesn't think and operate the same way you do, and they want to go, and they aren't going to be making those accommodations, they're like, just suck it up, let's get going. That would make me, I'm not sure I would even tolerate that, right? I'd start right out the gate and go, that's great, I want to go with you, but these are the things I'm going to need in order for you to enjoy having fun with me today. Like this is the way this is going to go. And I think that just comes like back to what you said, Sarah, of accepting yourself and feeling confident and speaking up for what you want. Because it has always been my experience that usually what I want, what I'm articulating I want, or I identify first, is still something, like you said, Zack, that applies to all humans. Like when I raise my hand and go, this is too much, we've been in deep thought for too long, the energy in the room's gotten too thick, we need to get up, we need to go outside. It isn't just me who needs it, but I'm the one who can identify the solution for it, and initiate the change before others have even acknowledged, yeah, I'm actually kind of feeling grody in here because of the energy. So we're just ahead of the game. And then I find that people love having me along, yeah, right? So I'm sure you guys are the same way. We bring an extra layer and depth to any travels we do with others, so that I've never had anybody be like refusing to accommodate, if I need a break or something to that effect.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I love go too as well. Like when I'm traveling and adventuring, especially when I'm in charge, especially when I know where my hotel is and I know where my resources are, I actually plan a lot of travel in my career now. And I was a corporate event planner for a long time too, because I know so well how to, HSPs are really natural about like curating that environment and making sure everybody, like you said, Katy, is in the right direction. The one thing that's been really, really helpful and powerful for me, and I'm reading now about more of it in like from the scientific HSP front, is planning for the aftermath. Right? Because we all know if we do that big thing, we absolutely love it, but we're probably going to need some serious downtime afterwards. So like when we're doing planning the adventures and add downtime afterwards, that makes sense. Like we understand we're coming home from a huge trip. Like I always come home a couple days. We learned this finally with kids. We come home actually 2 or 3 days early from vacation. And we have the final days of our vacation at home, like recalibrating back in our routine. We don't like come home on Sunday night and go back to school the next day, right? Which is great for HSPs, also great for toddlers. But when we're pushed in environments in personal or professional situations that we didn't plan for, we're also really, really amazing in emergency situations. Like I've heard this story from many, many HSPs. I've experienced this myself, of just being able to know exactly what needs to happen to get people to go to the right thing, to share the message, to get people going in the right direction, to address either an emergency or like something that's not emergency, like a work emergency that everybody thinks is an emergency, right? That like we're really capable of moving at really, really high speeds, really strategically. And that comes at a cost later. So I think something that I think a lot about is like recognizing, like if we plan a vacation, we can obviously plan the backside. But if we fall into a situation, whether it's personally or professionally, into that like helping, strategizing role with a group where we're problem solving unexpectedly, I think something that's really helped me is to acknowledge for myself and be okay with this. Hey, that was a really high sensory experience that really drained me physically and mentally and emotionally. And I need to take some time for myself, and that's okay. And I think in business, a lot of times, like, we don't allow that extra time for processing and that extra downtime of just like, hey, we don't need to run like a roller coaster all the time. We can build and design the best roller coasters if we have, the processing time following. So just being aware that there's like the ramp up, the experience, and the ramp down, or like the downtime following. Because HSPs on the positive side, right? We talked about this last time, we experience things so much more fully. So going to see works of art, touring a new city, seeing architecture, hearing new music, going to a festival, going to a concert, being at a really great party with really close friends, we actually experience that in a more full way. And it takes more energy to like be in that full inspired place. And then we have to process that information.
Yeah, I totally 100% love that. And actually wrapping this up to kind of take on both of what you both said, is I just read, I'm in the process of reading that new book that came out. I think it's called Sensitive. I don't remember the author of it, but it was us.
I was like, Sensitive, I don't know. That's a great title.
I know, right? I think it's called, I don't know what it's called. But it was really interesting because it was like, Katy, like you said, oh, I learned a lot about taking care of myself by taking care of a toddler, like snacks, right? And so many of us as HSP people, like, we know what to do for other people. Like, we're so in tune with other people, we sometimes lose that intunement, that tuning for ourselves. And the golden rule, do unto others as you want others to do unto you, like, it needs to be reversed. Do to yourself as you do to others, and give to yourself like you give to others. Because so much of that is that we don't take into consideration all of the things that, like, we have to come down from, or whatever it may be. I mean, everyone's different, but that really resonated with me because we're so good at taking care of other people. And we would tell people, and I'm like, oh, listen to your needs, listen to what your body says, but then we'll run ourselves ragged if we have the opportunity to.
No, I really like the way you put that.
We all have our own things that we've really, fine-tuned, but like, speaking to the two of you, I learned something that I can, take and put in my toolkit for the next time that I, am feeling that I need, a change up, which we all need. Do we have anything last? I would like to kind of go around and introduce ourselves officially. And if there's any information that we touched on today, or any of the things that we said, Syrah, would you like to share where people can find you?
My name's Syrah. I don't have any place to be found.
Oh, okay. Well then, okay. Sorry. Here you are. So
not yet. I will be found. You can, if you need to find me, you can actually reach out to Zack, because he can be publicly found, and Zack can find me. I haven't gotten to that place in my journey, but it's on my checklist. On my toddler checklist. But my focus is working with HSPs and HSSs in institutional environments. So corporate America, businesses, nonprofit organizations, government, academia, any place where HSPs naturally are, because they are drawn to solving really big problems, but where maybe they're not necessarily aligned with the structures that they have to work within. So that's my expertise and my passion, and I want more HSPs in leadership positions to be thriving and bringing their assets to work.
Wonderful. Thank you. And website coming soon.
Yeah.
And Katy?
Yep. So similar story, not quite yet accessible out into the world, but my
Zack
real...
is our agent.
He's our agent. Yeah. See, my area of interest or my passion is in the sort of the age of AI that we are in now, and how can we use AI to potentially feel more human. And it ties in with today's topic as well of how can it become another tool in the toolkit for self-care. So thank you, Zack, for suggesting this topic and for the great conversation. I think if I had to summarize in like a sentence, what I hope people take away is that there's no right way to do this, other than accepting yourself and not viewing what your needs are as necessary limitations, but really these are your enablers that enable you to be the amazing person you can be. And it's a bit of trial and error. And if you're somebody who happens to be high sensory seeking, it's okay that every day you're going to have to figure it out different because your brain's not going to want to do it unless it's novel. That's all right. So I would say that would be my main takeaway. And it's been a great conversation. So thank you, Zack.
Well, wonderful. And thank you both. And again, my name is Zack Ostrom, and I am an alignment coach that works with both HSP and non-HSP people to live authentically and mindfully, and to really just live a life that we know we should be living. And sometimes it's outside of the constructs of what we're given. So that's how I can help you. Thank you both again for joining us today. We were missing Erin, but she will be with us next time.